Um, Hopefully they didn't hear that. All right, so well, I guess I don't need that anymore. Hopefully they didn't hear that. No, I've been cleared. They said that I look good. Everything seems fine. COVID negative. They told me to enjoy my day. So Panama, here we come. Yeah, awesome. We'll talk soon. So it's the Panama Canal Day, the big main event, if you will. It's a long one. It's supposed to take about 8 hours, it says. So we'll see how that goes. And because of that, it does say food is included, but I'm not sure if that's like free food or that there'll be food for purchase. But because of that, I'm gonna actually stop by breakfast on the way down, which if you watch my channel, you know I don't do breakfast very often. So that'll be different. And then yeah, we'll go from there. I've got to be in the auditorium at 8:40. It is now 8 in the morning. So yeah, all good things. And I'll take you with me. We'll see what we see and do what we do. And we'll talk soon.
So I actually made my way up to the buffet. As you know, if you follow my channel, I don't do breakfast very often, but I felt like I needed to since this was going to be such a long day. And I got an assortment of my favorite breakfast stuff. I do like breakfast food, which is unfortunate that they don't serve it later because I probably would eat breakfast every day if they would serve it until like 12:30, 1 o'clock. But then from there, I made my way to the theater. I was a little bit early for my excursion, but right away I noticed how crowded it was in there. And it definitely became chaotic as the theater kept filling up with more people, and I found myself getting overwhelmed by it.
All right, so we're waiting for clearance to leave the ship. This is a level of chaos I don't think anyone was expecting this morning. It doesn't seem that anyone knows what they're doing. Yeah, I had to run back and get my passport because apparently that's required, but they kept saying passport or photo ID. But now they're saying photo ID is not good enough. They gave us all numbers for our bus positions or whatever. And they were trying to get everybody to, well, at first they were saying sit wherever you want in the theater, and then they tried to get everyone to move to like certain areas. But at that point, the theater's like almost full. So anyway, this is a little bit of a mess, but I think it's gonna be okay. And we'll talk soon.
Soon the number for my excursion was called and we made our way out of the ship, and of course we scanned out with our card and made sure we had our documentation and all that stuff. And then they put us on a really ornate looking bus because we had about a 45-minute drive to like where the actual vessel was that we would be getting on. The bus was pretty much like a standard charter type bus, but they just had it decorated kind of fancy inside. And it became very clear that we were in a water-based area, especially as we got closer to the actual canal. But soon we were pulling up and there were several buses pulling in as well, so we sort of had to wait our turn to get off of the bus. But within a few minutes, we were making our way down the gangway to board a really rather interesting ship. It looked small from the outside, but it actually felt a lot bigger once you got on it. It was multiple levels inside, and they had all kinds of like secret passageways and things, but I decided to start out on the upper deck. The name of the company hosting the excursion was the Panama Marine Adventures, and they specialize in the Panama experience. And up to this point, it did seem like a well-oiled machine, and everything had kind of gone off without a hitch other than the little glitchiness we had on board the ship before we got off. They even provided us with snacks and drinks pretty much as soon as we got on board. The only issue that I really had was that I felt like our vessel had been overbooked slightly because there weren't enough seats for everyone, and so I ended up sitting on the side of the smokestack, and that actually got my pants kind of covered in soot, which was a little bit embarrassing. But anyway, soon we were making our way down the river, and we had to pass under this bridge, which of course was a photo-worthy moment for most people. And this part of the river was actually pretty scenic, and the bridge definitely looked cool towering above us. But as soon as we passed under the bridge, things got a little bit more industrial, and before we knew it, we were actually entering the locks of the canal. And of course, at this point, I started looking around to see how the mechanics of everything worked. And then, as though we had invited it along with us, it started to rain. So good thing I brought an umbrella to complement my half-dead face. Once we were in position, this cargo ship came in behind us because the locks are designed for more than one ships to be in them at a time. And once they were in position, then they closed the gates and started lowering the water. I sped it up a little bit for the video, but it actually took quite a bit of time for us to get down to the next level. I think they said we dropped between 10 and 15 feet each time we go through a lock, and I think there were 3 or 4 of them on the section that we were on. And then once we were at the proper level, the gates open and we pull forward into the next section, followed by the cargo ship, of course, and the process repeated several more times. They also served us lunch, which was surprisingly very good. I really liked the chicken. It had kind of like a spiciness to it, but very bold flavor. When we got the sandwiches earlier, I thought that was the quote provided lunch, so I was happy to see that that was just a snack and we got an actual hot meal as well, along with unlimited Coke, Diet Coke, and water. But we continued to make our way through the canal until we were finally on the other side. It emptied out into kind of like a really big harbor area, and we could see all kinds of like shipyard type stuff, along with some nature and whatever, but also a lot of cargo ships, including a couple that were owned by MSC, and I snapped this picture of me on the way by because, being that we were coming from an MSC cruise ship and then there was an MSC cargo ship, I felt sort of a connection to it because if you didn't know, I'm a little bit of a sentimental weirdo. But anyway, we docked at what seemed to me to be the main Panama cruise port. There were all kinds of shops and restaurants and things there, but unfortunately we didn't have time to go in. We had to immediately go catch the bus, especially since we had to remain on our vessel for quite a long time while the local authorities cleared us, and they did a full ID check on the way off, which wasn't that big of a deal, but it obviously slowed things down for us. But yeah, once we were on the bus, they gave us this kind of postcard thing as a souvenir and memory of our trip, and then we made our way back to the cruise ship. This was the longest excursion I'd ever done, and since I'd gotten up so early, I was actually getting pretty tired at this point, and several people fell asleep on the bus on the way over there. And then we had one last security check, where we of course did not need our passports, before getting back on board the MSC Divina.
Alright y'all, so before we discuss the excursion, let's unpack what was happening this morning. So the issue is that normally you leave your passport on board the ship and take your photo ID with you. And that is so that in the event that something happens, like you get mugged or you lose your backpack or whatever out there, the ship can vouch for you to get you back on board, and then you have your passport to get home. So a lot of people were afraid to take all their forms of ID with them off the ship, because then what if something happens out there? As it turned out, we didn't need all that. When we came through, they did check a photo ID, and they did make sure we had our cruise card, but my driver's license was perfectly fine for the port authorities here in Panama. I don't know why it was so confusing, why everybody was like being weird about it, and what have you. The other thing that I mentioned is the number thing. So when you do an MSC excursion, they assign you a number or a letter or a color in some cases. But anyway, the numbers this morning, when we were going in, they would check what your number was and then just go tell you to sit down anywhere. Well, as the theater started to fill up, then they started to think, well, maybe we should have put the numbers together, which would have been fine if they had been doing that from the beginning. But now with the full theater, you're trying to tell everybody to move and chaos ensues. And it was particularly problematic for people in wheelchairs and with mobility issues and stuff, because they were like scrambling to try to get across the giant room with other people like herding around. And, you know, a lot of it boils down to just organizational things. And then I know that they haven't been in Panama for a while. I don't know when the last time this crew and whatever were here. So maybe they just wanted to make extra sure that everybody had the proper documentation so they didn't have issues with people, you know, getting it back on the ship and stuff, which is fine. But they should have confirmed all that with the local authorities instead of, you know, all this confusion. Especially since some of the people were saying that a photo ID was perfectly fine. Other people were saying, no, you had to have a passport. It wasn't clear, you know, based on who you asked. And then at the very last minute, they decided, oh, you know what, maybe everybody should have a passport. And then there was this huge mass exodus to go up the stairs and get passports and stuff that we ended up not needing anyway. So yeah, one of the most disorganized starts to an excursion that I've ever experienced. But now let's talk about the actual excursion itself. So overall, this ended up being a very nice excursion. The company that organized it, I can't actually remember the name. I'll try to remember to put it on the screen or something for you all. But they were amazing. All the guides and whatever were awesome. It was so much less pressure than the excursion that I had in Jamaica. On that one, every single person wanted you to tip. And don't get me wrong, when it comes to gratuities, I'm all about, you know, tipping for exceptional service and, you know, recognizing the work that goes into those things. But when, you know, 10, 11, 12 people throughout the process of a single excursion want to be tipped, I don't know. And it was not optional. I mean, it was. If you didn't have money, then fine. But the second that they knew you weren't going to tip them, the whole vibe towards you changed. But that was not the vibe in Panama. The people here were great. They did mention gratuities and stuff at the end, but they were very nice about it, very casual about it. They didn't stand there like staring you down or anything like that. and that was very much appreciated. Going through the Panama Canal was really a lifetime kind of thing for me. It's something I've always wanted to do. I think if I were to go through there again, I would want to go on a cruise where the cruise ship actually goes through there, because this ended up being a really long, kind of drawn out excursion. And what people don't realize is you're in those locks for a while, especially us, because we had this cargo ship behind us. And so we had to get in position. And then once we were clear, then they got into position, and then they got cleared. And then once we were both good, they would close the gates, and then they would lower the water level, and then the gate would open, and then we would have to go out and then wait for them to come out. Like, it was a very slow process, which is fine. That's the process. But for those of you who are expecting like a big, fast, up and down through the locks and all that stuff, that's not how it works. The people who work at the canal said that from the Atlantic side to the Pacific side or vice versa, it can take up to 10 hours to do the full canal, depending on traffic or whatever. And you're not going to get through it in less than like 7. So we did a partial crossing. It took us a little over 3 hours to get through. And that was a very, very small segment of it. But anyway. Overall fun experience, long day. It took 9 hours for the whole excursion from start to finish. They did provide lunch and a snack and water and soda. Well, it was just Coke, but Diet Coke, where it was all included. And then they did sell local beers, which I thought was super nice for $3 a can. And I think that was it. So, we were never hungry, we were never thirsty, and, people were constantly checking up on things and, keeping us entertained and whatever. And yeah, so can recommend. If this is an option on your itinerary, I say go for it. We'll talk soon.
So I made my way up to the sports bar to hang out with my bartender, and I grabbed a couple of drinks and stuff while I was there. And I also planned to grab an order of the chicken wings because I tried their wings before on a past cruise and I really liked them. I was also feeling pretty exhausted at this point, so I wanted to kind of take it easy and not go to the dining room. And then I found out that I could take the wings to go, so I brought them back to my room.
So it was the plan all along to get dinner here at some point, but tonight ended up being the sports bar night, and apparently they'll make it to go if you want. So I'm eating in my room and chilling like a villain. I want to thank you all for traveling with me. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, all those fun things. We'll talk soon, and y'all have a good night.